Okay, well, thank you, BG and Meta, for joining me again for Nix Ignite episode 2. I think tonight we're going to be covering more of getting our user environment set up, things like diving deeper into Home Manager and Nix Darwin and getting our shell and just kind of our typical tools all configured.
Yep.
Again, Meta will probably be driving most of the night here, but yeah, where shall we start?
Let me go ahead and quickly just take a look at my personal dot files and see how I structure it a little bit here. So one thing to note about Home Manager that's really cool is that Home Manager is system agnostic. You can have a Home Manager config for Nix, Darwin, and then that same Home Manager config can be moved over to Linux if you're on Nix OS or using Home Manager on another system. Because it's just constructing a shell at the end of the day. It'll take the system host architecture and it'll use that architecture dynamically. So when you create a Home Manager config, you really are creating a kind of completely portable shell configuration and environment that you can drop on any machine and you can use as you want and update as you want as well. So we're going to want to open up in your editor of choice. If you want to use neovim, feel free.
We have this in, didn't we create, there we go. So this is the directory I was thinking of, right?
Yep.
And then what am I opening?
Open up the file in module Home Manager. So Home Manager is the file, okay. Module is the directory.
So how does this work? I go envim. We're pretending to use this. Home Manager.
Home Manager. Yep.
All right.
Cool. Okay, so we are now in our Home Manager configuration file. So as I mentioned before, and I'll drop this in chat again, there's a Home Manager search that's really nice and available on the interwebs. It helps you find a lot of options and features and things like that you might want in your environment. And so you kind of really, at this point, just kind of need to start asking yourself, well, what do I need? So I would say, what meta do you need for your environment if this is a completely new shell? What would be the first thing you would say you need?
Yeah, tmux. Yeah, that's definitely one. Okay, so let's try to make a little list here.
Yep.
So we have tmux, we have emacs.
Okay.
Git is already there.
Mm-hmm. Actually, you can remove both Git and neovim from that list, and we'll explain why in a second. So you can add them to your list, but remove them from the packages.
So we'll just make this empty like this, or should I delete the? Okay, that's fine.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So yeah, we have tmux, we have emacs, we have git. Let's see, what else do I actually use? There's probably a whole list somewhere. What did I? I mean, I use tree a lot, which doesn't come actually on Mac OS by itself. I use, let's see. In general, I just use the built-in ACK. Of course,
I mean, all good stuff. Like
I'm gonna use line again in general, closure stuff, right? We have that whole thing. So that's like the, that's like your cargo for Rust, that sort of thing, right?
Sure.
So
one thing I would
probably have again.
One thing I would recommend is that language specific?
It is language specific.
Okay.
So maybe that doesn't belong here.
For now, let's keep that out. Yeah, because we'll have
this
reasoning.
This is generic. Generic is all this stuff.
Yep.
Outside of these things, what else do I use? I mean, I use a web browser, but
But okay, that won't be something that we'll be getting from Nix, right?
I don't think we need to bother to build Brave.
Though it
Nix,
does,
right?
and it can.
I'm sure it can, but we probably don't need to.
Nope. Don't need to. Yeah, don't need to. So we can start with this. This is totally fine.
Okay.
You've got emacs, git, and tree, right?
Oh yeah, I mean, I guess there's also the matter of an actual like the terminal that I use, right? Like
Sure.
terminal emulator.
Mhm.
So at the moment, that's Alacrity.
Okay.
So
Cool.
we could add that there.
Okay. Awesome.
I would
Perfect.
jump in and say
mhm.
that I'm also kind of making a list here. FZF and RipGrep.
Sure. Sure.
Damn it, Apple.
That's amazing. I love that.
Ghosty. I'm not sure if Ghosty is built anywhere yet. I've seen some conversations.
He has a flake for it.
Does he?
Yeah,
Excellent.
he does.
Oh,
yeah. Although it's not configurable yet, and I might be hopping on that now that I'm in the beta too. So we
Sweet.
might need to make a ghosty flake config.
Oh, sick.
Yeah. There's a derivation for it right now. Yeah.
And could you explain? I've read a little bit today. What is a derivation?
Right. So there are fundamentals of Nix that are, I think, things that you pick up as you move with it, and then things that you maybe don't even realize you use, and then there's things that you get very comfortable using. It's like a paradigm of like just so much knowledge in the Nix community. Derivation is really the core of every output in Nix. It's what's actually built. So if you were to say like a Docker image is your Docker output, a derivation is the Nix output. It's the actual build that Nix produces with the exact change set and SHA attached to it. So it's the literal folder in the Nix store, basically, is what the derivation is. And so that's like the name of the artifact, that Nix produces, essentially. So whenever you build something, that's a derivation. And you can also think of a derivation as a type in Nix as well. It's a type that is passed to inputs and other things that can be reused to get files or run programs or things like that. Derivations are completely reusable. So I could have a derivation that builds something, and then I could have another derivation that runs my build that I just built. And so one of the things that's really challenging is when you're automating a lot of build stuff, you have to, do it kind of sequentially where you like run this script, run this script, run this script. And if you get like 6 or 7 stages in that build process, it becomes very challenging to like have that dependency cycle or that dependency flow always be, accurate. With Nix, the derivations link through each other and create hierarchical dependencies out of the box. So you can have a dependency that builds inside of a dependency that has another dependency that does something else, that does something else, and then like just say build, and it will just like Docker build it in the proper dependency tree. And so that's really the power of what a derivation is and what it does. So yeah, and
Gotcha.
like for example, at Hippo where I work, one of the things that my coworkers really like about Nix is that we can actually have very complex steps in the build process, but it all builds the exact same way every time because of that derivation dependency. Okay, cool. Sorry. Does that answer your question? It's a pretty it's a pretty like foundational core of the whole thing, so it takes a little to fully understand, I think. Okay, cool. So we've got tmux, emacs, git, tree, and alacrity, which are all in their own, maybe outside of like tree, have a lot of customization that they can have behind them. Right now, when we started with this template, we just had a packages and then like a list of binaries, right?
Right. Yeah.
In the Nix world, that just puts that in your shell for you. That's all it does. However, you may want Nix to actually manage the configuration of the thing, right? And you can't get that by just having it in the packages list. And so that's kind of a thing to note is that, like, for example, tree might go into the packages list. I don't know, but I feel like tree, like we don't have to put it there yet, but we'll check. and
We'll
see
check.
if it is
Okay.
as an option. Because if it
Okay.
is, then there might be some more customization there, right?
Yeah.
But with
pretty
Home
sure
Manager,
yeah, here it is. It is tree. Had to install it with brew. How about it? Okay.
So yeah, with Home Manager, it will allow you to enable programs at will instead of installing them, and then it will expose specific configuration definitions that you can use per program to then define it.
Here we are, BG. Let's hear about it.
Cool. So just type in tmux.
All right, we can do that. I
yeah.
have no tmux config. I literally just have bare bones tmux on my system right now. So anything we do is going to just be new and great, I'm sure. So anyway, we're here.
Okay.
Tmux.
So once you type in tmux, you'll notice that it fuzzy finds against the value of whatever you type, and will show you relative options. Yeah. Sometimes what's really powerful about Home Manager is that it doesn't just integrate with programs, it will also extend configurations of integrations of programs. So you'll see here, like, for example, there's programs Fuzzy Finder, tmux enable shell integration, right? And so if you wanted your FCF to integrate with tmux out of the box, and you didn't want to have to add any of that configuration, you could just enable that value, right?
Right.
But you'll notice that, again, if you look a little further, you'll see like programs.tmux.enable, right? Programs.tmux.package. This is all of the tmux specific stuff.
Okay.
So what you could do to start, just to kind of get a feel of how this works,
I like it.
Yep, you could go back to the editor.
Okay, perfect. Great.
And then we
work
will...
for Dillon. I'm all for it.
How you doing?
And okay, so we're here. I have
Cool.
I can see the options behind me.
Yeah.
So we're good on that. So what should I start doing? I'm guessing these options actually, mean something. So where should I put this block?
I have my own preference of having everything in alphabetical order, so I would just put it under home. You could have like home programs, right?
Okay.
Stuff like
so
that. But that's
home
up to
is
you.
like, so I'm gonna do something like this.
Nope. You're gonna have programs as the first definition, the first key.
Okay. I just thought you said home programs. Oh, I get what you mean. You mean you mean programs after home, like the alphabet. Got it.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah. Exactly. You got it. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. Nailed it. Boom. Nailed it. Awesome.
Alphabet. Got it. Okay.
Bro, I think like our minds connected there because I saw you receive the message. It was awesome. So how you define this is up to you. What I like to do is, because we're now talking about we want to configure programs,
right?
You could technically have programs as a set, and then put each program inside of it, and then like have like nested sets, right?
Yeah.
Or you could do exactly what you have, which is like programs.tmux, right?
So if I was to do a set, do you mean something like this? And then, is that not how you define a set? I mean, I'm just making.
You would need the closure, along. But yeah.
I mean, I need to close. I have to close the bracket. What a dumb language. Just kidding. All right. Yeah. All right. So if I wanted to be a set, it would just be like this, is what you're saying, and then I would say tmux.enable something like this.
Yep. All right. And then you could continue doing that, or if you wanted, you could then have tmux be a
tmux
set.
as a set. Okay, that is kind of nice, so that we're not just saying tmux over and over again. I don't know.
Right. Yeah.
Does this end up being terrible if I do it this way?
No, it's totally preference, man. Whatever you want. Like,
okay. I don't know.
It's about getting comfortable with the code and how you like it.
Here we go. I hate this tab setting. Okay, I'm gonna get over it.
Probably. Well, you don't have neovim configured, but I'm sure there's probably a LSP for Nix.
There is for sure. But don't worry, we'll get you there. I mean, again, if you want to use Emacs for now, you can.
No, it's fine. I want the chance to make fun of neovim as much as possible before I ever actually use it for real. So,
Okay. So here's what's cool. Technically, all of these things are batteries included but not required, right? Which is something you'll hear me say a lot because it's something as in like the developer experience I think is crucial for having a nice experience and having everything just work.
Yeah.
So all you have to do if you want tmux is just enable it. It will already have a predefined package, which is
the package and everything.
Okay. Yeah, it'll already have that, so you don't need the package definition. So I don't have to.
This is if I want something special. I prefer to not have special things as much as possible, because therein lies complexity.
Sure.
But anyway, go ahead.
So well, in that scenario, if you wanted, you could still define it, but it will be coming from the same inputs that we mentioned before, right? Which is Nix packages. But it will already get it from Nix packages because it's inheriting the same thing. Nix packages is a core component of Nix. It's not just like a repository. It's an actual definition in Nix that you can import, and then it knows how to retrieve packages from it. So a lot of program or a lot of I don't know, frameworks, libraries, whatever home manager is, all of these things inherit from the same source. So if you installed tmux with home.packages, it would be the exact same package as just enabling this.
Okay, that makes some sense. Okay.
Yeah.
So
you do have, at least with Nix, decent expectations. You should expect that it will install from the same source from Nix packages that you set it up with.
Right.
It's like apt in that sense. I mean, I think this is where Nix also, I don't know, it's good and it's bad. You can always look at the code itself to see what the default is, right?
Right.
Or the documentation to see what the default is. If you want that specific, explicitness, you will have to define it yourself, though. This is a very common Nix thing to just kind of be able to just change small little things and tweak it as to what you need. It's more of the inverse of having nothing. I think that maybe that's a good way of putting it. With Nix, it's instead of having nothing and then being like, okay, I'm gonna put this down on this blank canvas. With Nix, you've already got all the components there. They're just disabled.
Right. Okay.
And then you say okay, I want to enable this. I want to tweak this. Okay, I don't like this default. I'm going to tweak this. Okay, now that's good. All right, now I'm going to tweak this. And it's the same thing with building software with Nix. If you build an OCaml binary, for example, and it has tests, it will run the tests as well in the same build as an opinionation. So I don't know. I don't really remember where I was going with that.
No, that's fine. I think that all makes sense. So, enable equals true just means that I now, this means that it will install tmux on my system, correct? If I was on a fresh system, didn't have tmux installed, etc.
So, install is technically the wrong word, but it will add it to your shell.
Okay,
basically.
So that's what I care about, right?
Yeah.
So if I have it disabled, is it going to remove it from my system?
Nope.
It's just that in my shell, it's no longer there. It's just okay. I get it. Okay.
Yep. And that's the Nix store.
Okay, got it.
Yep. That's that immutable store. So it'll stay. Now here's the caveat to that. If you run a garbage collect on your store and you're not running Nix, do you think it would still be there after the garbage collect?
I would.
Wouldn't it depend if it's a dependency of something else?
I would say no, right? If it's disabled and you're just saying clear it out, I don't need this anymore, so we'll just remove it, right?
Right. So you're both technically right.
Love this.
Yeah, so the garbage collection in Nix is actually very fascinating. It uses a tree structure to look for anything that is essentially being used and linked in the system. And so anything that is sharing a symlink in the system will not be garbage collected, right? So you could have it disabled, but then say you were using it somewhere else.
Yeah.
It technically would not get garbage collected until, as you mentioned, everything got cleared out. There was there's no root connections anywhere. Now we can remove it. So it's actually very clever in that way that you'll never be in a situation where you'll lose something and you're like, ah.
It's not like it's just looking at, oh, this isn't used in Nix code, so I'm going to remove it. You know, it's actually looking at how it's used in the system.
Yep.
So we have a question about tmux config in chat. RCH as index says he has a tmux p with a default config for 2 panels of alacrity. Can home manager manage that config?
I got a tmux p with a default config for 2 panel. I would imagine so. I don't really remember what tmux p is.
There is a flag to enable tmux p in the programs.tmux options. So
there you go. So yeah, so it sounds like that's a mixture of integrations where it's like you've got tmux, you've got tmux p, which is whatever it's doing, and then you've got alacrity, which is integrating with that. I would imagine you would enable the tmux part in the tmux side. So you'd go to tmux and say, yeah, does tmux p have support in tmux? It does. Cool. Enable that. Great. Yeah. Now you have tmux p support, right? And then you would go to alacrity and try and figure out, like, you know, how does that integrate with what's, it might just work out of the box. Once you enable tmux p, then it might just work, you know?
Okay.
And you just pass your config. And you can pass a normal config to tmux, essentially.
All right, so I think that's fine. Let's see. They have a bunch of options, but I've never messed with my tmux config at all because I pretty much just use it because Alacrity doesn't have tabs or splits or anything like that. So I just use it mostly for
does it not?
Separate sessions in Windows. No, it's bare bones Alacrity.
Wow.
So that's why I use tmux.
My tmux config, I have a bunch of stuff going on. I don't have the just stock out of the box experience.
Yeah,
so maybe worthwhile.
That might be interesting. Here, I'm gonna go ahead and do this because I'm sure I'm gonna want that, even though I don't actually know what that does.
There you go.
But you know, we'll go with that.
Yeah, whatever. I mean, again, that's what the options are there for, to kind of just figure out, like, what would I enable, what would I use. And if you want
so once I've done this, obviously I already have tmux installed on my system, probably through brew. So what is my next step once I've added this little block here?
Right. So close the write the file and close it, basically.
Okay.
Make sure it's staged, which it probably already is. Like, it's already in the tree.
Right.
It just has to be in the tree.
We need to add it here and do a little bit of this. We're there.
Yeah. So as long as it says modified, we're good. It just needs to be in the tree. That's all. Yep.
Right.
So, okay. So now what you can do is you can say darwin dash rebuild.
Like this.
Yep.
Okay.
And then check.
Okay. Check.
Dash flake.
Dash flake like this. Okay.
Yep. And then I would put this in quotes just because I don't know how your terminal works.
Yeah.
But dot.
Neither do I, so it's fine. All right.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Dot pound, and then
pound like this. Okay.
Yep. And then you're on Intel, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. So then x86 64.
In the quotes as well.
Yeah.
Okay.
I believe that's what it is in Kickstart. Let me make sure.
64. Yeah. I don't know. It probably isn't my command history, but we'll just pretend this works. It's looking good. It was an error.
Okay, but this is okay. This is gonna be something you're probably gonna hate.
Okay. Oh, is it the semicolon? I forgot semicolons.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So everything but the last enclosure in Nix has a semicolon next to it, basically.
Okay.
Yeah.
Everything
So whatever
but
you
the last.
return, that's how it knows what it's returning.
I
Basically.
hate semicolons. Okay.
I love how begrudgingly we're just dragging you through this. If we can make you a happy Nix fan,
let me count my semicolons.
Yep.
Writing Java again. All right. Okay, so we did Darwin, rebuild, check, flake, architecture.
Yep.
And now
so the reason why we do that really quickly before we do the next thing.
Yeah.
So when you tell Nix you want it to update your system, you tell it to do so with Darwin rebuild. If you're on Nix OS, you would use Nix OS rebuild. The idea here is that you're telling the system, hey, I have a definition for you, and I want you to abide to this next definition, right?
Yeah.
If you weren't using a flake, you would pass it like the configuration.nix file, for example, right? The Darwin configuration.nix. So if you don't provide it the flake definition, it will use that by default, right? But because we're telling Darwin rebuild to actually use the flake itself, it doesn't matter what the Darwin configuration in your home directory is defined as. So this is what makes it so that you can start with a brand new system and then go from 0 to 100, because you can just override and run your own at any time. And so when we check, we first make sure that it builds, basically. But we don't
is just making sure that my config is basically correct, right? Like this, like the dry run.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and if you do that every time, you'll be much, especially if you're on Nix OS. In Nix OS, I would say it's worse because Nix OS controls the entire system. So if you make a networking change and you just say switch, you could take your network down. You could accidentally reformat your hard drive. Like it is a little. You have to be a little bit more careful with it on Nix OS. But with Darwin, it just makes sure that it builds. Because if you go through the switch process and it fails like halfway through, you might be stuck in a half-built environment, and you might have to switch back.
Okay. So to be clear, you said Nix OS is worse. I'm pretty sure those were the words that.
I mean, maybe for the developer experience, I don't know. Not for systems. I mean, it is nice, but yeah, it definitely is much more volatile. Maybe is the better word to put. Yeah, volatile. Unquote. BG says Nix OS.
And then Kiov in chat says, so just to be clear, can we set up the whole computer from the config with everything we use?
Yeah, that's how my computer or my Nix OS system is set up. Yeah, from the ground up. It has like hardware, mounts, users, pretty much SSH, sudo, all that stuff. You don't have to go into another SSH dconf to like change the port on SSH or something. So it's just in the config. So you've checked. Now that we know that check works, we can do switch.
Switch is the other one, right? Okay.
With Mac OS, you can, but it's only up to certain limits. Nix OS actually goes down to the kernel, whereas it's OS. Mac OS is proprietary, so mileage may vary. But you can do some, like you can do a decent amount of system stuff with Mac.
I always feel proud when I type my password correctly the first time. Okay.
So now that we've got your whatever, what do we call it? The configuration added. You'll see that we have a new profile generation 2, right? If
getting there.
2 failed,
right,
and you broke, you could switch back to 1, right? But because this worked, we're fine, so we can keep moving. And now you could probably check like where is to see where tmux is.
So if I do which tmux, this is still in.
Oh, that should be Nix.
So I actually hit an error.
Seems like
this.
Nix.
I hit an error that said existing file, and then the path to my existing tmux config is in the way of Nix store, blah 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 blah. Please move the above files and try again, or use home manager switch-b backup to back up existing files automatically.
Yeah. Yeah. So, like I said, Nix comes batteries included but not required. And so when you enable it to manage tmux, it's going to manage tmux, meaning it's also going to manage the configuration file for tmux. And so what it's trying to do is it's trying to put its immutable symlinked file in the location that your current file exists. So the easiest way to get around that right now would be to go in and just rename it, just, back or something, and then run it again, and it should work. That's going to happen for every thing that you have that has a config file, basically. So be aware of that. But that's where you also start seeing, like, okay, this is what I need. How can I start translating this? That's probably a little bit more of it's a little bit more of like a chaos engineering approach way to do it, but it'll find your problems quicker, I think, for sure. Yeah. So can we look at like do an ls-alh on the Etsy profiles?
Yeah, sure. Like that whole path or just this?
Yeah, the whole path. I'm just curious.
Yeah. So we got a symlink to Nix, right?
Beautiful. So we have taken over. If you had a different tmux, we've taken that over now.
Which I'm pretty sure I have it in my brew list, if I remember right.
Yep.
Okay. Yes.
Okay, so we can see here I'm pointing at the right tmux. I uninstalled from whatever it's called, brew.
Yep.
So now I have configuration under .config, right? If I look in here, I have this new tmux, and then I have my old one over here.
Okay.
So what next?
So here's I'm gonna give you the approach that I took. Okay. Now I've streamed a decent amount of Nix, and I'm going to say this in as just a precursor to this. If anyone comes into your stream and says, "Oh, you did it the wrong way," whatever, just F them. Like, you can do it any way you want. So I'm gonna show you the way that I did it, because like sometimes it's easy to just be like, let's put this in the Nix language and call it a day. But then there's times where it's also like, this is such a complex configuration. I really just want to be able to like tell Nix, look at this file, right?
Yeah,
and
I
use
have quite a bit of stuff in here.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. So in this scenario, we can achieve this with Nix as well. The first thing we want to do is we need to put this file with the Nix configurations, right? So what I would recommend doing is like in your Kickstart repo, create like a conf directory or config directory, whatever you like, whichever one you prefer. And then like maybe a tmux directory or directory for each one of these programs. And then inside of them, put the config files that you need for them, right? And in this scenario, what we're going to do is we're going to actually tell Nix, hey, just read this file and inject it into the config that you generate. And that will make it so that your config essentially is migrated in a few easy steps. Now, again, a lot of people in the Nix world would be like, no, don't do that. Do it the real Nix way. But it's like, I have a life, man. Like, I got stuff to do. And this is fine. Like, again, my whole neovim config is still in Lua. And so I use this as kind of an approach to that.
So let's get down here and let me rename this. So it's that tmux.conf. Okay, and we'll go back up. Oh, we got nil ls installing. Let's go. I assume that's the Nix. Okay. Gonna go into module, home manager, and then in here. Oh. Rip. I was just so happy.
Well, it tried. It tried. We'll get there. Don't worry. We'll get there.
So
hopefully.
I'm guessing there's probably like some thing I can go look at on home managers docs for tmux. Extra config.
There you go. Click on that. What does that say?
Strings additional configuration to add. That's a typo.
Yeah, I know. It happens.
Jeez.
Hey, it's generated. It's
We might as well go open the PR right now.
I'm removing Nix right now. Yeah, I'm out.
Done. So
Typo.
Embarrassing me. All right.
So then
So
we should be able to say something like
extra config.
Oops. Extra config. Oh, we got it. Look at that. Extra config. And then would it be just like a file path?
So hold on. So you can do that, but I will show you one other thing really quickly, which is you can do multi-lines with Nix as well. So if you
like that?
literally wanted to, you could just copy the whole file and then, yeah, exactly, double dash with a colon at the end. And then you'd have it all right there. Now, if you want it to be a file, you actually have to tell Nix to read that file, right? Now Nix does have some support for like reading and like looking up files and like stuff like that. They're called built-ins. And so what I would recommend doing is Googling, which is something you'll end up doing often with Nix built-ins. And then, yeah. And so what we're looking for is something that will read a path and then give us that back as essentially a string, right? Or a multi-line string for the extra config.
Okay, so this looks like we want. Are these top level or are they prefixed by anything? Can I just
so
say read
I
file?
think it's actually just built-ins is the prefix. So built-ins and then dot. Yeah, there you go. Yeah. And it's relative to the actual file itself. It will always be relative to the file itself. So wherever this is, I think it'd be like up 2 directories, right?
Yeah.
And then config, yeah. There you go.
I gotta change the order. Is this a string here?
No, you just need a, yeah.
Did you see that, Meta? I just got a nice little reminder to put my semicolon in.
Yeah, that's okay. I mean, some of us need that. It's whatever.
So, what I would recommend doing now is try it.
Right.
So save it real quick, and then now, do you think if you just try this like this before you do it, do you think it'll work? Are we missing something maybe? Because
I know what we're missing, but I'm the guy in the back of the class that's not actually going to raise his hand to tell anybody and just like watch people fall on their face and just know that I'm smarter than them, but not actually put any effort out.
So
okay, sorry. Go ahead.
My assumption is that since this concats to the end of the file, we probably need to like clear the original one. Nope, wrong.
Go back to your config, Dylan. We'll walk through this together. Now, maybe it's better to run the command. I don't know.
It's the wrong way. Okay, so we read file. This is returned as a string.
Yeah.
Dylan, you have something under your cursor right now. Where does that come from, Dylan?
Built-ins. Does it need to be come in as
That's just my guess. I could be completely wrong, but I just wanted to be as condescending as possible. All right.
You don't actually need to do that. It's not bad. Or at least it shouldn't be.
I was hoping, in some ways, it's worth it whether I'm right or wrong. Either way.
Sounded convincing.
I know,
so
right?
What's funny is now you've even shooken my knowledge where I'm like, shit, man, I hope I'm not wrong now. No,
Hilarious.
So you added a file to the repo, but have you staged it yet?
Yes.
Yo, you did stage it.
Yeah.
Did you? Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I didn't see you stage it. Okay, if you stage it, then you're good. But yeah, you have to do that. You have to do that. You have to stage it. Otherwise, Nix won't know that it exists.
Boom.
Bam. Okay, you got me. Try it now. Try it now. And remember, I would recommend doing a check.
Yeah, I was
always
trying to get
first.
There.
Good
I
job.
need to, like, alias
Good job.
that command.
I really try and make sure a lot of people like just build it into your memory, add whatever you add to the tree so that you don't, because I've had many people come in Discord and be like, it's not building, and I'm like, is everything there?
All right.
Okay.
Reload
Well,
the
it built.
shell. And
It's
let's
experiences
just...
like this that remind me why I don't speak up in class, because then, like, if I am wrong, then I lose face. But if I'm right, I
looks
can continue to think, wow,
good
those
to
people are
me.
dumb. Okay, good.
Yeah, this feels like it's working. Yep. All right, we've got my Tmux configuration in Nix.
Yeah, no, it will conveniently symlink it to wherever it should be. So then there you go. You could see that it might have added some of its own stuff at the top.
Yeah, it looks like it did.
Yeah. So those are some sane defaults, but then you'll also see that, and this is a common thing with Nix, it will always make sure to embed paths to the dependencies it needs in the thing that it's running. So everything in the build structure references the store at the end of the day, whether if it's needing to run its own shell, run its own binaries in a shell, all of those will be Nix store paths, and they'll be like huge, generated bash scripts.
Gotcha.
So yeah, you were able to really easily move that, and that what we just did is you can read a whole directory of files if you want, and it'll concatenate them all and stuff like that. Yeah. Well, so what do you need to do next? Like, what would be the next thing? Do you feel like Tmux is where you need it for now? Do you want to move on to the next thing?
Nux is good. I went ahead and just looked at the look at this. Look at this mouse movement. I didn't have this before because I did mouse enabled equals true on the Tmux config in neovim, and so now I can scroll up. It's very impressive. Okay.
The convenience is nice. It's not wrong.
Yeah, I mean, who knew we were at this point in technology?
Well,
Okay.
so, okay, hold on. In all seriousness, one second. One thing I will say, to truth of that, because I am that nerd, you might find a lot of settings in programs that you didn't even know how to configure or were there. And then you'll look at the program settings in Home Manager and you'll be like, oh, I can integrate this with this? Just enabling it? Oh, okay, cool.
No, that's fair.
So, yeah, it is.
There is something to be said for discoverability, right?
Mm-hmm.
And when it makes it easier to discover, it's
Exactly.
easier to actually use, know that it exists.
Exactly, yeah.
So yeah, for my config, like the only thing I did was mouse enabled, and other than that, this is just the default Tmux. Just in case people cared, this is the default Tmux config that Nix created for me.
Could you do me a favor? Could you open up your emacs for a second so I could kind of just see what you have?
Be prepared.
Okay. No, I'm always fascinated because there is a lot of Emacs support in Nix. Actually, there's quite a bit.
Yeah, sure. No, I believe you. No, I'm being yeah. No, I know it's hard to tell when I'm being serious or not. It's very hard. Here we go. Here's Emacs.
Okay.
It greets you.
Okay.
I mean, isn't that nice?
Yeah, that's nice.
Okay, what did you want to see? Like the config, or you just want to see like what I use, or what?
Yeah. What does your config look like? Like, how does Emacs primarily? I've never used Emacs, so
yeah, sure. So my config lives in .emacs.d. The entry point in general is .emacs.d init.l, and this is the main config file. But then this imports other files. So you'll see like, this autosave list here on 7, and then 25 down, I'm taking in this custom file and loading it into my config. So that's just like multi-file config, right? And of course, this is all an Emacs list.
How many files do you have? Do you know?
Well, how many files do I have versus what I actually need? That's a good question. There's probably literally like, so the whole Emacs directory, there's a lot more to it, but like the actual config that I would care about moving over is probably around 3 files.
Okay.
That's what I would say.
Okay. So there's a couple of different approaches you could take with this. Nix does have the ability to do things like for loops even and things like that. And if you may recall with what we just did with Dillon, when we did the built-in readme or built-in read file, he didn't wrap that import with a string. Like that wasn't an actual string. And this is one of the things that makes the Nix language unique is that, what was I going to say? It will take a path that you reference it if you don't put it in string, and it will actually put that in the store for you. So when you do like source ... you're just telling Nix to store whatever is in the current directory into the Nix store and make it immutable. And so that's what Dillon did with the read file, is he actually told Nix, hey, I want you to put this file in the store, and then I want you to symlink whenever something is used. So technically, if you wanted to, what you could do is you could put each one of these files in the Nix store, and then this main file here, is this file the only file that references other files, or do those files reference files as well?
You could do it the other way if you wanted to be crazy, I'm pretty sure, but I only have like a single level of nesting for loads.
So basically this file just references those files. There's
Correct.
no like
this is the only file that actually references other files.
So here's what's fun is you could take this file, wrap it essentially in a Nix function, and then each of the paths here where it's like add to list, vendor, customizations, you would add those to the Nix store, and then you would tell it in Nix, this is the path, and then it will translate that path, and when it generates it, into the actual store location.
I see.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think it does.
Yeah. So this, for example, with Dillon, he had extra config, and he just did it to an actual path. But what we could do is you could grab this entire file, essentially, put it into, a Nix file. Again, like I said, wrap it in a function, and then have that function take the parameter of all the inputs it needs, and then it will render those paths. I could show you if you're interested. Like, we could probably move your whole emacs config pretty quickly if you want to try.
All right. What do you think, Dillon? Is this interesting enough for you? See how this works?
Yeah.
All right. I guess we'll do it. What the hell? Let me do one thing. Let me just make a commit on my home directory that has all this stuff in it. And then we'll, before Nix destroys the world. Okay, that's my commit.
Well, we're going to put... So we won't be moving any of your files. We'll just be copying them into your repo.
Okay, so, Emacs comes first, which, it is reasonable. I mean...
It comes first when you're the one driving.
It comes first because it's on my system, and because I'm older than everybody else, and because it's older than everybody else. Okay, anyway. So we're doing Darwin rebuild check. Flake... Let's see if I can remember this.
So dot first, always, so that it knows the path. It's like Docker in that sense.
It's this? No.
So technically dot and then pound, yeah.
Okay, like this. Okay. And then it's just the architecture.
Yeah, you don't need the quote technically unless your shell doesn't support.
Oh, that's
you know
right.
What I'm saying?
Okay. We'll try it without. And then is it just 8664? Did I have to put something before that? I don't remember.
Just x8664, yeah.
Oh, I forgot the X.
But see, it was like, did you mean?
Yeah. Good job. At least, thanks for helping me.
Tell you, yeah. So what's interesting to me is I actually would have suspected that you would have had
been mad
the same...
about something, right?
Yeah, you would have had the same conflict. So, let's try opening up Emacs really quickly. Like, what happens if you open up Emacs in the current shell that you're in?
Well, what's interesting is the way. Okay, so now we're just gonna try Emacs in the terminal, which we'll see what happens when I just try Emacs like this. Okay, so it did what I thought it did. It opened a window on my system. We're about to see what happened. We get this same error that you guys already see on screen, I think. And there are errors.
Things are broken. Okay.
Yeah, things are broken.
Yeah.
Here.
You might have Emacs as a application in your home directory.
Now,
So Nix.
Yeah, you are correct. So I do not have Emacs in. So Emacs actually was never. If I would have done Emacs outside of what we just did right now, before we did that, it would have said command not found. The only way I usually go into Emacs is opening it, just like any other application that I installed from like the App Store or a DMG or something.
Yeah. Yeah. So that should be in your home directory. There should be, and Dillon, you should have it as well. You should see an applications directory, and then in that it should say like home manager apps.
Let me look.
Home manager apps. Okay.
Yep. And then in there's emacs.app. So if you ran that, I think that might work.
What,
okay.
the path should be applications home manager. Okay. Sure enough, I don't see anything in my directory. It's empty.
Okay. So it still comes up with the exact same thing that it did when I ran it from my terminal.
Okay.
And I think, let me see. I'll just because this is going to be too annoying the way that it works. I'm just going to do this. And
so Dillon, you might not have anything because you don't have any like applications that are actually being built into a binary.
Okay. So this is the really helpful error message that we have from Emacs. It's very readable.
Okay.
But essentially it's saying, I think, that it cannot find closure mode.
Closure mode. Okay.
Which is like just a certain like Emacs package I have installed, right?
Okay. So that's fine. That's totally fine. Let's move on to the next thing then. Let's go back into the Emacs config because there is an extra packages option just for that. Which one did you say you needed?
This one is closure mode for
example. So this will happen with
now
any
I have
of the
this
packages.
installed on my system, of course, like through Emacs, but go ahead.
So it doesn't matter in that case because Nix, as I mentioned, will always reference the store. And if it's not in the store, it tries not to just inherit. Yeah. So if there is a specific Emacs plugin or something like that that you need, when you basically add it to the extra packages option in Emacs in the Emacs settings.
Okay, so I'm just going to go back into my home manager config, basically. For now, I'm going to do this again, just so that I can have pretty syntax highlighting, because that's mostly what people care about when they use neovim. And so we'll get that back enabled, and then you say we have this extra packages feature.
Extra packages, yeah.
Okay. Something like this.
Now it's going to be a list, right?
Okay. So we're going to go here.
Yep. And then what I would say now is we want to go to Nix packages and look for any of the Emacs plugins that you need. So what was the first one you said it was?
Let's just say closure. Now let's see. Closure mode.
Closure mode.
Yeah, so like with a J, like this.
Okay, cool. So I'm going to drop a link in chat.
Okay.
That link will give you the result to the package that you want to reference.
Okay. So this is Emacs packages dot closure mode. Okay.
Yep, and the only caveat to that is you'll put packages dot Emacs packages. because you're referencing it from the actual input at the top.
Like this.
Mhm.
Okay. And then it's emacs packages camel case and then closure dash mode the way that I have it. Okay.
Yep. Now we can try saving this, running it, and see if we get to another error and, go through that. Or if you can think of any others that you feel like we might need to add to this list, we can add to that now.
Yeah, most of them I have set up. Will be interesting to see. I think we'll just start here.
Okay, cool. Yep.
And
So
see what happens.
now you can check if you want to. You can keep checking. If it's small changes like this, it may just be worthwhile to check or just to switch. However, I will say if you check and then switch, you never have to build to the same thing twice. So
right,
it's not like it's really going to matter change wise.
So undefined variable envim because it's not called envim there. It's called, was it called neovim or what did I do wrong?
It would actually be packages dot neovim, I believe. Yeah. But it's the packages thing that's the real takeaway there is if you're referencing a package, it needs to be coming from the packages at the top. So it'd be packages.neovim. And the reason why you're doing this, just to be clear, is because you're not just saying like, hey, this is the name of something. You're actually referencing the packages.neovim code in Nix packages. So you're reusing their neovim definition, which is really the build output of neovim.
So what does this with packages do before?
Oh, sorry. That means you don't need that part. I didn't see that. Yeah.
That's what I was wondering.
Yeah, that's fine then. Yeah, it was just
no, it's a great call.
What's the difference from home.packages with packages and doing our programs dot file or program name? Like, why would I want to put something in the list or the set of home.packages versus doing programs dot
right
something?
So I think it's twofold. One, if you don't have any desire to customize it, or if it's just a very simple binary. So if you're just like, I just want get, I don't want home manager to actually manage get, which is what you could do. Like for emacs, for example, technically we could do that. But I think at that point it also like doesn't inject all of the Nix store stuff as much as it would with programs dot, for example. So yeah, it's just like a simpler install. Yeah.
Gotcha.
Okay, so now we have an Emacs error, and it's the extra packages, and it's saying that this is not of type function, blah, blah, blah. Did I just make a syntax error again? Doesn't look like it.
Let's see here. So it should be extra. Where did it go? Okay. Emacs extra packages. That looks programs.emacs.extra packages. Yeah, that looks fine. And then does it want to actually, sorry, let me just check here. Packages. Oh. Okay. Sorry, this is weird. All right, so sometimes they'll do stuff like this. So this is actually wanting a function which returns a list.
Okay.
And the reason why we're going to do that is because that function that it provides to extra packages is Emacs packages. And so what we're going to do is we're going to write it. Sorry, let me write it in a way that makes sense. So the right after equals, you'll do epkgs.
Okay. You said epkgs?
Yeah, just like Emacs packages, and then a pure colon.
Okay.
Yep. And then what we've just done is, essentially said, okay, this is now a function that has the parameter epackages. that is essentially the same thing as like with. And so what you would do is you would replace packages.emacs packages with e packages.
With e packages, okay.
Yeah. And so this is it's kind of like dependency injection in a way you can kind of think of, where it's like this function that they're providing actually gives you the reference you need for all of the packages.
Okay.
Yeah. So I believe that should be the way to fix it. Okay, cool. And so yeah, now you can see it's actually building the packages or that we need.
Okay. Yeah, this will be good also because it's also a matter of laziness. Like it'll be interesting to see. So because like there's two ways of installing. Well, there's many ways to install packages in Emacs, right? But like you can do it just by calling like a command essentially, right? Or you can do it in your configuration. And sometimes I've been lazy and not added things to my configuration for installs. And it'll be interesting to see if there's a difference between packages that I have already defined in my configuration instead of packages that I'm just trying to use, but not actually design.
I think you'll get so used to managing it in Nix, it'll be in one place and then it'll be there forever. That's really the experience that it ends up being. Neovim's the same way. Like I add it in one space and then I'm just like, oh, okay. I don't have to worry about it again. As long as I build from the same config, it'll be there.
Okay, cool. So now I should have Envim.
And then we should be able to have, or at least try running Emacs and see what happens.
We'll see what happens. Okay, we have a new error. Very exciting. Let me see if I can get to the actual point of this error. This one looks like it's cider. So
right.
All right.
So
I'm not going to subject chat and everybody else to like literally my extremely crufty Emacs config. So like let's go through this one and just like we found out that there's I have to fix cider, right? So my first step would just be to do this right now. I can't remember. Is there a list delimiter? Is there a comma?
So if you want to try and find something in particular, what you can do is it's e packages, it's just .cider. There's nothing else there.
Now the reason that I'm like I can be fairly confident with this is because of like in general there's not naming collisions with Emacs packages.
Sure.
So like,
and they will follow their normal names too.
Right. So so it's a comma in between these?
No comma, just spaces.
No comma. Okay.
It's just space separated,
Just like Lisp, baby. Just like Lisp. Okay.
We got one. We got one. You like how things are separated.
Let's just I mean, we don't have semicolons, but that's been pretty obvious this whole time. All right.
So here's what I will say is interesting, and Dillon, you might have even had a similar experience. When we added extra config to your tmux, right? Yeah. It tried generating that file, but by default there is no extra config. So there might be what is the same thing that's happening here, which is because we haven't told Meta's Emacs to use extra config, it's not generating that extra configuration. So you might be able to just enable neovim and then it just starts using the config that's already there, and see if that works, and then migrate your config as with that or so, because right now this seems to be loading his config, but it's not trying to generate one in the place of it.
Interesting. Yeah, I'll give that a try here. I've got fuzzy finder almost configured. I have a weird error, but I don't know if that's Nix or FZF itself.
Yeah, it's fun to determine which one it is.
Okay, let's see. So now I have a Corfu error. Interesting. Now this could just be a case of it going through. So like I said, I think we've demonstrated how I can continue this on my own.
Sure.
And so I think we're probably good. Now, I think the main thing is, as long as, let me just do this real quick. We'll get rid of Nix's emacs. Right, that's why I went to this, and just do a little git status. Okay, cool. So it didn't overwrite anything in my emacs D directory. So if I load emacs the way I usually do, as in the one installed in my normal application folder, I'm not going to see any difference at this point. So as long as that's not broken, I'm happy to maybe move on to something else, because this will probably take me a while to go package through package to install it. And then maybe we can follow up with this next week, or, next time.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to just note, and I'll say this, which is you're in a situation now where at least you know that Emacs and the version you're using, and it's reproducibility, like it's going to be the same everywhere.
Right.
So you have the same portable Emacs now on every system that uses Nix, right?
Yeah.
So that's really cool. And yeah, as you said, now you just go through it step by step. You update the packages. However, you won't have a reproducible config, right? And so that's the only part that we're not, if we skip forward, which is fine, because I'd rather you get it working right and then move the config,
Right. Yeah.
to do that.
Right.
But the next goal would be to then say, okay, now I want to use extra config. Get the files in Nix and then have them referencing the store, as we mentioned. And we could do that next time. Or we can even do that off stream, and then we can show them after. Like, I don't mind. But I just want to make sure that that's what people would need to understand, is this, like, the next step would be, okay, I want to move my files into Nix so that Nix generates them from the store and generates it into the paths that it needs. Like we did with Tmux. Yeah. But yeah, absolutely. We can totally move forward. And again, another thing too is like, if you want to change that Emacs version, like Nix Flex is saying in chat, you can use things like overlays that like get like nightly latest version. Neovim has that too. And those are just other flakes from other places.
Right, yeah, because right now I'm on 29.1 and this is using 28.2. So, obviously I'd rather it be matching what I'm on.
Yep.
But
yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Cool. So my FZF is slightly broken, in that it's definitely pointing to the right thing. So if we go into FZF, my my preview is now broken, and I don't know why. So I was trying to fix that.
Do you have something specific to Ghosty in your FCF config?
Well, that I do, but like this is any directory. It's just not showing the. This is probably an FZF issue.
Right. Okay.
So if I go look at how I configured this, we're in Home Manager. I came and threw all this in. Maybe the colors thing is a problem. Maybe I screwed that up.
Normally it would at least tell you if you put in something that you weren't supposed to, I think, for some of this, but I could be wrong.
Oh, there is a...
Yeah, you've got dot colors, yeah.
Do I need to do tmux enable shell integration?
Are you using tmux with this, I guess, is my next question?
I am. Well, I'm using FZF inside tmux. I don't know if I need that or not.
Worth giving it a shot? Yeah, I'm not sure.
Let's kill the colors quick and just make sure that's not the problem. And we can say Darwin, do a check.
So I just want to, mention this quickly, which is like where you guys are both now. Meta with Emacs, you with FCF, and all the other things that you're working on. This is a good place to be. This is the place you're going to learn a lot about Nix, because you're gonna run into problems like this. You're gonna try and figure out how to use the language better. And so if there's any takeaway from the stream today, that's kind of why when we started, I was like, you know what? No, we're just going to throw you in the deep end, because once you're in that deep end, you really do learn a lot. You really do start learning, like, okay, what's the syntax? What's the expectation? Like, how do I move stuff? How do I make things integrate with each other better? Because there's definitely some settings that work together, and you enable them on both sides before it may work properly. You might notice that there's also like one of my concerns is also slightly that your FCF has a dependency that is not in Nix packages. And if that's the case, then we might have to add it manually and build it with Nix and then have it add it again. Like if it's a ghosty thing and that's not in FCF's binary, right? It won't know that it's a plugin.
It shouldn't be a ghosty thing at all.
Okay.
It might be FD. I think I was looking, I echoed out my default command and it says it as FD, and I think that's not installed by default, but I think like this should be, I think this is being supplied by Nix because I brew uninstalled FZF.
Okay.
And
you've already closed your shell entirely and reopened it?
Yeah. So that will do a reload of my shell. I think I still need to do Darwin rebuild. RIP. Let's see here. So I have to go fix something.
Oh, it's just enable shell integration.
There's no true to it?
No, there's no ZSH in it. It just says FCF.
Oh.
Or wait, which one are you looking at?
Copilot got me.
Yeah, it's just enable shell integration.
There we go.
Yeah, there we go.
And then we will do our old check. And hopefully this works. Okay, that feels like it's more happy. We'll reload my shell. And let's try FCF again. Still upset.
But okay, yeah, invalid value tip if
I don't know.
Can you do it with can you do an FCF without it in the pane, I guess? Because that pane's just showing the output of FCF, right?
What do you mean? I'm sorry.
So like what happens if you run FCF directly?
That's what I was in,
Oh, okay.
I think. Let me go make sure that there's not something in my Z-show-C that is messing with this. I think I already got it. Yeah, I commented this out. So this is what I had before as my default ops. So maybe I can probably set that.
Yep, you could do that's where you would set it, yeah.
So I wonder if I can just take this string and put it in.
You'll need to separate them by, thingy, but yeah.
All right, so let's go in there, home manager, and let's see here. I don't know what this really does, but I guess maybe we'll leave it for now. Or I don't know. You think we should leave it? I don't know what that does.
I would just remove it until you know what it does. Yeah.
So we'll say default ops.
Mm-hmm.
And then it gets an array.
Mm-hmm.
Oh God, that's not what I wanted.
I'm reading about an emacs overlay right now, and I don't know.
What do you think?
I'm upset that this is what I'm doing with my life.
Okay.
No, it's fine. It's fine.
So that's that one. And then
I'm wondering who's still gonna be using Nix by the end of this and who isn't. There you go. Yeah, the Nix community does have a lot of like maintained overlays that are good to use. Like they're totally fine.
And what is an overlay?
So an overlay is essentially a package that is what like the program that you expect, but it might not be the variant of it that you expect. So it might be like latest version. It might have other like build dependency overrides or parameters enabled. An overlay is I want to change what the Nix store or what Nix packages is giving me, but I don't want to write it myself. Right. So I'm going to use somebody
overriding. Kind of.
Pretty much, yeah. It's called an overlay because it essentially like replaces whatever you're building with the package that you want from the overlay. So, like for example, a lot of commonalities or a lot of common times people use the neovim overlay to get neovim nightly. And so when you do that, you're actually changing the package to being built from the overlay rather than from being built from Nix packages. But it's just that one package. Nothing else will get changed.
So there would be like a neovim nightly overlay.
Exactly, yeah.
Gotcha.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, this is also something I can end up debugging on my own. I'm sure there's an obvious setting or something. Let's see here. Trying to think about what other things are important to know and set up. So we got derenv, we've got fuzzy finder, we've got tmux set up and working, which is sweet. We've got about you have about 45 minutes.
Yeah. I mean, so I guess like one thing to kind of, we could go into terminals, although we wouldn't be able to do ghosty. Ghosty, that's what we need to build the support for that. But we could do alacrity. So there's still like we could look at shells if you wanted to say like this is how Nix manages shells. And yeah, like we could really go over any other like this is really I think like I wouldn't want to go too deep into like the editor or anything like that because in my mind you have it's such a different experience from just saying like I want to like home manager to manage things to be like okay now I want my editor to also be managed by this, right? Kind of like what you're doing with FCF and derivation and all these other things. The editor is just like so opinionated. It's like its own, I don't know how far we'd be able to get in like 45 minutes,
Yeah.
But
let's jump into alacrity and shells.
So if we were to say like, all right, now I want emacs to, or I'm sorry, now I want like, my terminal, not my shell, my terminal. It would be the same thing, right? We would say like, all right, we want to enable alacrity or alacrity, whatever, however you say it. And then customize it as well, right? So home options would probably be where we would start.
Okay, so let's see what alacrity. Okay, alacrity exists. Enable package settings are the three options.
It's pretty straightforward.
It's not surprising considering alacrity does not have a heck of a lot to it. Look at me putting my semicolon first. Look at this. Okay, enable equals true, and that should be all I actually care about because I don't use any other alacrity settings. So if we're here and
check and switch. Now, when you switch, right now you're probably running alacrity from your programs folder, right? Like it's a symlink to your
Yeah, right.
So that will be the first thing you'll have to change is after you switch, you'll basically replace the icon, you know, from the applications directory to the one
Right.
in the home manager apps path.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And so on Mac OS, like Nix isn't going to add those applications that they have under home manager applications, like symlinked to my applications directory, right?
Nope.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think they're technically privileged directories.
Yeah. All right. Wow. Okay. So we are here, and then I'm guessing it will show up. No, I did this wrong, didn't
It's
I?
in your home directory.
Oh, duh.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Applications, home manager, and there's Alacrity. Okay,
Yep.
cool. So then I can do this, and it opens Alacrity. Everything looks fine. We're good. Now, of course, that's very simple since I don't have any config for Alacrity, but it looks exactly like the one I use. So I don't know. I don't know if Dillon has Dillon loves his configs. So, you know, I don't know if he has something that has a little bit more work than this.
We can install Ghosty if you want.
So, yeah, I mean, my ghosty config just one file. Like, I don't have very much other than that.
Well, what I mean to say is we won't have program.ghosty enable, right? Like we will have to,
I see.
like that's one of the things I want to do with Ghosty is I want to add that as an overlay. Like you can do that too as an overlay. You can say like, all right, I want to overlay this module, and now these settings become available to me. If it's not like available in Nix packages, for example. And so that would like to do what does that achieve? That it gives you the ability to have like services and configs out of the box. So if you're like, all right, well, I want my own custom programs config, you define it and then you just import it as a module, and then that would become available in Home Manager or whatever else. So in our case, if we wanted, we could go to Ghosty's repo, and at the bottom it shows the input that you can use, and then how you could actually install it with Home Manager if you wanted.
Actually, before we do ghosty, Nix Nix Flakes actually is a good point. How do we set up gitconfig? Like that's definitely going to be a thing we're going to need to do.
Yeah, it's the same thing. It's programs.git whatever value you need. Quite often you'll see with Nix, you'll have just like sets that match the key value of the parameters in your normal config files, right? Git gets a little bit more interesting because it actually does extend that definition to Nix, but it's all available to you in yep, just like that. And then you would go to, you know, again, Home Manager, search programs.get, and you can even install GitHub CLI and enable it there. So if you wanted both Git and GitHub CLI, you could just do GH enable.
I don't believe in GitHub CLI.
Oh, sorry, my bad.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah, good call out.
Yeah, good call out. But yeah, what's you know, again is you'll see that you have a lot of options that are kind of available there by default. You can you know, enable Delta if you want. You can give Delta options as well. You can set up hooks to paths where you want your hooks to run.
Right.
So this once again becomes, you know, looking at your config and asking yourself like what translates directly, what goes into extra config, and to kind of give an example, let me show you what mine looks like. So yeah, here's mine. So I will copy this and then I'll paste this in chat. So yeah, so if you look at mine really quickly, mine is pretty extensively built out because I even use like GPG keys. I do customize my delta and stuff like that.
Okay.
And so you'll see like at the very top, I just have like programs.git. Don't worry about the recursive update thing. You don't need that. But then inside of my definition, you'll see I have like all of my delta, enable options, and then that kind of whatever this is in, Git syntax gets translated to the key value here. And then if you look in extra config actually is it does have the ability of doing nested values. So if it's like color.ui, right? Commit.gpg sign, fetch.prune, right? All of those kind of go into the extra packages.
Okay. So if I wanted to move everything, then I'd have to look up what my git. I forget how to do a lot of this stuff. U global git config. I remember to do that.
One thing I might have to copy from your Nix stuff is fonts.
Geist.
Well, not Geist in particular. Let's say I have a purchased font. Like, how do I add that without like exposing the font files for other people or like violating my license?
So there's going to be two parts to that. One, if Nix builds it, it's going to be in the Nix store. So you just would need to be aware of wherever it's built, whatever store that will exist in, so probably not put it on like CI or something like that, unless you don't care, right? And then Nix will take whatever it can and fetch it. So if it's a if it's an HTTP download, then you would fetch it via the URL in Nix, just like you did like built-ins, read file. You can also do like Git repo. You could even do a GitHub. You'll notice that if you look at my dot files and then you go to, hold on, let me see here. I'll share it with chat. Like if you look at how I actually make Geist or build Geist mono in that file, you'll see that I'm telling it I just want to make a normal derivation, which is just make derivation is basically the lowest level builder or one of the lowest level builders. So I'm not opinionated at all here. I'm literally just saying I want to build something. I'm not saying I want to build a Go package or a Darwin system. I'm just saying I want to build something. And another note to that is that everything uses this. Pretty much everything. Like this is the final make derivation call that every thing that Nix build basically uses as well. So this is just the low level of that. So, and so I tell it, hey.
Sorry, go ahead.
No. Go. You're fine.
I was gonna say, so I could like effectively put like my font files in like a private GitHub repo, and fetch it that way.
Yep. Exactly. Yep.
Okay.
And you can do that with anything with Nix. Anything like that that's an input in a private repo, you could easily do. Yeah.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah.
I will probably mess with that this week. I'm probably going to be popping into your Discord a lot this week with questions. So.
I expect it. I expect some homework this week, boys.
Would you then? I know it's preference, but totally. Would you recommend? Like, I have a whole list of aliases. I don't see that. Do you use aliases yourself?
I do.
Because I don't.
Yeah.
Okay,
I'll show you where they are in my dot files. Yeah. So I do use aliases. Like for example, Nix, the Nix build command that I use is like 7 different arguments and stuff, and it's really annoying. And so I just do NB, and then it runs the Nix build command for me, and then I can be like NB dot whatever, so I don't have to run the whole thing. Trying to find where it is. Yeah. So they're not, so you'll know, no, this is something you will notice about like Nix and Home Manager and stuff like that, is sometimes they're not named what you expect, like environment packages, you know what I mean? Like it's kind of sometimes weird naming conventions, and this is one of them.
Right.
This is they actually call them home.session variables, or I'm sorry, not home.session variables, shell aliases. Yeah, here we go. Sorry. So those are for environment variables. That's if you want environment variables. If
Okay.
you want aliases, aliases are unique to your shell. So I
Got
use ZSH. And so in ZSH, there's an option for shell aliases, and then that's where all of my shell aliases exist.
Okay, so that's where your shell. No, I was actually talking about get aliases. Do you use get aliases yourself?
What do you mean by get aliases?
You don't use get aliases? Wow.
I mean, I might. I don't know.
So you get your Git aliases from OhmyZh. You have the Git plugin. That's gonna give you like a ton of Git aliases.
Oh, that's what it is. Yeah, I have manual ones. So like
I
for
see
instance,
what
I do
you're
get
saying.
st for status.
You mean like man
You know,
stuff, like
I do
command
get po. Yeah. you know.
Yeah. So I have ZSH and I have all my
that's
ZSH
why.
with that,
Okay.
and so yeah.
So it's still. So like for instance, I've got my git config, which doxes me, so I'm not going to cat it in this terminal.
Don't
but
hit enter then.
yeah, no, I wanted
with
to
fire
throw it
right
up
now.
there. It's a good
Yeah.
thing. I just like living on the edge. You know, it fits my personality.
Fair.
I really think I have not changed anything besides aliases. So maybe this. So I guess my question is: this git config exists, and I already like. When should I expect it to be like? You already have a git config, and you need to do something about it because it didn't complain on check.
It might not complain on check. It might not complain until you switch, because
Okay.
switch is when it actually tries changing things.
Right.
And again, this is kind of a might here. It
Yeah.
might not also do anything if you don't give it any options, right? That was the other thing I mentioned, which is a lot of Nix's stuff is like, well, we're not going to try and change your already existing setup
Right.
until you tell us you want us to manage that.
Okay. So
Yeah.
it didn't change anything basically by me moving my git to Nix. It's still using my existing config file since my aliases are working.
Yep.
So what you're saying is it didn't do that, but if I was to do something like I don't know how to type, so I just have to go up until I find it. If I was to do something like, God, I don't have relative line numbers on neovim. What the heck? Okay. What do they call this? They just call it aliases. And then I had, something here. It might complain now that I'm saying, Nix, I actually do want you to define my aliases for me.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. That was my question. Thanks.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. And like I said, that kind of his mileage may vary. Like I know some things that do that, and then there's some things that like, no, we need a config, so we need to make sure that it's there because it needs like a shell or some other dependencies, stuff like that. Yeah. It does kind of depend.
I'm just seeing if it like forks my aliases this time.
So what I would suggest, this is the homework that I would suggest for you guys, genuinely, which is don't try jumping into your editor configs unless you really want to.
Yeah.
Just get your home environment set up, get your shell set up, get your, your terminal set up, get your, all of your other plugins set up. Go through Home Manager and look for everything that you can with Home Manager. Because again, next week when we do jump into the editor configuration, it will be, like I said, us kind of like, okay, how do I move this from Nix to, or from, neovim to Nix or whatever. And like one thing to note is Nix is really, really customizable and portable to the point where once you get the derivation that you want, and this would be like the goal of our stream, I think, as well, next time, is I want you to be able to run your editor anywhere with Nix, like just the editor. And the reason why I say that is because I was able to do that recently myself. And because it exists in a repo, because this config exists in a repo, you can expose that config and make it so that you have this editor experience basically anywhere, and Nix will just build it and give it to you out of the box. And that takes a little bit of more nuance to get there. But yeah, like I said, I do think the next big step would be go through Home Manager, set up anything that exists. Like realistically, you should not have to manage a ZSHRC file at all. I don't.
Yeah.
I don't have a ZSH file at all. Everything in my ZSH is in, the config, and it generates it. Same thing for, your terminals. Like, again, Ghosty will be the exception because there's no configuration there yet. But Alacrity for sure. Like Alacrity, if you look at how I have Kitty set up in my config, Alacrity is pretty much the same thing. Like when I moved from Alacrity to Kitty, it was almost like just changing the name, and the way they both take settings and options are pretty identical.
I think that's a great place. How do I get relative line numbers in neovim? This is not really a Nix question, is it? But we could at least get this in here, and I imagine I could just like define it in here somehow.
Well, see what you're gonna do, Meta, is you're gonna go to your browser and you're gonna go to Home Manager Options Search, and you're gonna go to neovim.
I tried that, and I didn't see relative line numbers. All
well, let's see here. What we got? There's got to be some extra. Well, there's an extra config. Could do that.
There's extra config. Mm-hmm. There's extra Lua config.
That's the one you'll want. But yeah.
Extra.
I mean, if you want to write it in Lua or in Vim script, it's up to you. It's either option.
I see.
Pull up the extra Lua config little modal, and I will paste in chat the command you're going to want to put in.
Okay.
1 second and get to my options file.
Yeah, there's actually a lot. Like, what's funny is it seems like we really got nothing done. But it's not true. It's not true at all. Like, this is the eye-opening part where you have to see it all sitting around you. You have to be like, oh, okay, I see. Like, I have to move this, and I have to have these expectations, and like, it means that it's actually working. You're joining the cult.
Yeah,
I'm in.
Yeah. But yeah, exactly. And like, again, there's so many different ways you can achieve this in Nix. You were saying, oh, well, that's not there yet, right? Like, I don't have that option there. I just see extra config. That's where things like Nix Vim come in. Nix Vim is a open source project that takes the neovim language basically and translates it into Nix Vim or into Nix code, so that you can describe it exactly the way that you're talking. That just doesn't come out of the box with Home Manager.
Gotcha.
Mm-hmm. So
you can do multi-lines on that, which maybe might.
Is this the multi-line syntax? Is that what
that is
correctly?
Yeah. Well, the double quotes are, or double whatevers are.
Okay.
But you can enter,
I can do this, so it doesn't look quite as bad.
I wouldn't do that.
Badness is this?
So what I would do is go to the first Vim and then just enter a new line.
Thank you, BG.
Yeah. No.
What, to put it right here?
Well, and then and then give it. Yeah, you can. Yeah. It'll clean it up for you. It'll clean it up for you. It's not gonna add all extra characters and stuff.
But like, okay,
and then enter again.
And then we're gonna do enter again. Okay, thanks for letting me know how to use an editor. This is my first time.
And then one more enter right there.
And then we go here, and then we probably want this more like here. Right?
Yeah.
Okay.
And then one last thing.
Yeah.
One last thing.
Oh, it's a semicolon, isn't it?
Yeah. Semicolon. Yeah, the semicolon.
Yeah. All right.
There you go. Yeah.
Look at me. Aren't you proud?
Dude, I'm so proud, honestly. Like, I love it. I love it. Well, there was a couple of other things. I was looking at my config really quickly, and there was a couple of other things, because I feel like this happens too. I don't really deal with it that much myself, but I do know some people that do, which is like, hey, I don't really want to, I don't want Nix to really manage anything. I just want it to take a file and put it in a path, right? Like, that's it. I just want it to take a file, good old .file style, and put it in a path, right?
Yeah.
And that is what I just shared in chat, which is you can also tell home manager, hey, home.file in my home directory, I want you to create a file. And then the next is going to be where that file exists, right? So in my case, I do .config nvim after ft plugin markdown nvim. And the reason why I do this is because I want to override the FT plugin and make it so that on YAML files or markdown files, set wrap is enabled by default, just for this one specific plugin. So it's a really weird edge case, right? But then I tell it, hey, the text of this file is set local wrap. That's it. Now what it'll do is it'll create the file for me, and then it'll take it and render my my file for me as well. If we wanted, you could do what Dillon or did before with the import and the read dir, right? These could just be paths to the files in your local whatever, and then it will take it out of it and then put it into the path for you. So if you just have the simplest desire of just saying, I want to have it in the repo and to copy and paste from the repo to a specific spot declaratively, that's how you do that. Yeah, I mean, that really is a lot of what Home Manager does. Is it really does manage the home of the environment that you sit in. Its focus is just that. That's why you really only want to have global binaries in it. You want to have it manage everything else by configuration, and you want to try and have it as declarative as possible.
That makes sense. So, like, before when I was like, oh, I need line again for closure, it's like a language-specific tool. You're like, well, let's wait to do that.
Mm-hmm.
Is that something that you would put in, like, I mean, obviously we're not going to do that today, but, like, what's kind of the next step of thinking around that? Now, that's something I want globally available, obviously. Like, I need that exposed anywhere I want to use it.
Yeah.
But like, how do you think about those sorts of things?
So I think my first thought around that would be that a flake is just about whatever you want inside of it, and you want access to it at that given time. Right.
Okay.
So the flake of our home manager is what we're always in, what we always have access to, and what we always need to use.
Right.
When I'm working with a specific program, however, I just want to switch to that flake, really. Like I want to have my same shell, but if that flake uses a different version of OCaml, if that version uses a different version of whatever, I want to use that version. I just want to say, in the same way that we do like a switch here, I just want to switch as well. And that's Nix Environment, which is what we will cover next. Well, probably after the next one, because the next one will be editors. But after that one, we'll talk about derenv. And derenv really just takes your shell and then goes, oh, there's a flake in here. Okay, I'm going to switch to the shell that's defined in that flake. Right?
Nice. Okay.
Now, here's the fun part. What happens when it's an editor-specific thing? Like, what happens if it's like, I need the LSP or the formatter as well? Like, do you just put it there in that, and then it just doesn't work, when you're outside of it?
Yeah.
That's up to you, I really think. I chose to have everything injected into my editor as like a dependency, as like an extra package, right? So when you run my neovim, which you could, if you wanted to, you could run my neovim right now. We'd probably want to do it on Dillon's computer because it's gonna build OCaml. But actually, if you don't mind, really quickly, I'd like to show you what we could do with that, which is if we could go to Dillon's computer really quickly. So there's this concept in Nix called wrapping. And so, for example, if I wanted Dillon to run the exact same editor experience as me, meaning he gets my LSPs, he gets my formatters, he gets my config, he gets the binary, all of it, right? I couldn't just build the binary and then be like, run with the format. That wouldn't work. right? But if I apply this concept of wrapping, what I can essentially do is tell Nix, hey, I want you to generate a shell script that has all of those dependencies in the path inside of it. And then I want you to run envim in that shell script. And then it essentially, in direction, takes the script, grabs everything, puts all of the things that you need from the Nix store in the path, all the LSPs, all the formatters, everything. And then it runs neovim in that shell. You don't see it because you just run envim as it normally is, but you actually get that. And so if you were to do Nix in your command, so just do Nix space run and then do GitHub, because we're going to go to GitHub, colon, and then in caps, alt, ALT, dash, F4, dash, LLC. And then for me, it would be / the alt F4 stream dot envim, and then pound neovim, and then enter. Now what's going to happen is it's going to go out to my flake. It's going to say, oh, I see that in this flake you build neovim. And as a matter of fact, the build that you do is a wrapped neovim. So I'm going to make sure that not only do I build neovim on this system, but I'm going to make sure that all of the LSPs get built, all of the formatters, the config even gets built, and you should be able to see it essentially as it tries doing that. And so you can package things in a way with Nix to where if you're just thinking about constructing shells, you pretty much can just construct a shell with any dependency you want in it and then tell it to run that shell.
Yeah.
And then it'll work. It's basically wrapped. And so it's a very common practice to do that in Nix when you're like, how do I kind of like containerize this, but, have it run with everything it needs inside of it. Otherwise, you'd need to use something like Home Manager, right? Because Home Manager is the only other way that it's going to know where the plugins path is and where, everything else is. So, there's two different approaches you can even take with that, your editor configuration and stuff if you want it as well.
So I'm getting a little confused, the difference between a wrapped derivation or a wrapped package and a flake. Like, don't they kind of accomplish similar things? Like, couldn't run your neovim config as a flake?
Well, so a flake is the delivery, right? A flake is like, I need a way of sharing this in a format that I can give to other people. That's what the flake does, right?
Okay.
The wrapping of neovim makes it so that this specific thing I'm building has the dependencies with it, instead of me having to be like, okay, now I need to use Home Manager and list all of these dependencies and have everything together. You can technically wrap. So like, for example, if you were like, all right, I want to build my own OCaml CLI, but I need another binary with that.
Yeah.
You could tell Nix, hey, here's my binary, here's the other binary, put that binary in this shell with my binary running. Now, every time you run your binary, that shell can be accessible. That binary can get that. So that's what wrapping is for.
Gotcha.
But the flake part is to then say, okay, I've wrapped this. Now reuse it wherever you want.
I see.
Mm-hmm.
That checks.
So what's happening right now, and don't worry, I'll show you how to garbage collect this. So it's not that bad. But what's cool is doing this. It's going out, it's looking at neovim, but then it's also looking at every single thing that the editor needs. So again, all of the LSPs, any of the formatters, all of that is wrapped inside of this binary. And again, it just makes it very, very portable and easy to reuse. Pretty much, yeah. And I mean, like, another thing to benefit here would be to use your own binary caching, right? So one of the reasons why this is taking so long is because it's saying, hey, I got to build all this stuff on your system. But if you had binary cache, then it would just download like it does when you do, rebuild or switch or whatever. it would go out and just say like, oh, well, I've already built this on this system. I can download this, and this only then takes like 60 seconds.
So what would you just like put the build of this in like S3 or something, and then point your config at that?
Yeah, so you can essentially tell Nix Flakes which registries or not registries, which caches they can use, and so you would add your cache to your flake. And then you would push every time you build in like CI, for example, those would get pushed up to binary cache. And then anytime you're locally developing, you immediately get that for free.
Nice. That's sweet.
So developers would never even have to build locally if it's been
Yeah.
built in CI once. Yeah. Is there any other questions though? Like, is there anything else that I can try and answer? Again, I think at least for this next week, homework wise, Home Manager, everyone should be, should try diving deeper into Home Manager and just, again, getting stuff set up. Oh, wow, let me enable this. Let me try and see what this is like. Okay, cool. Yeah, that works. Like you said, MetaMe, with like the native building. Look and see if that's an option that you can enable or tweak or customize. I would not be surprised. I have genuinely heard from a lot of Nix users that the Emacs experience is really nice once you have it set up on Nix, because it's just, like you said, it's such a pain to have to redo, and to know where everything is. Like, I think
I wouldn't expect as much. I mean, the people that I know, the people that kind of started me on Emacs were Nix users. So.
Oh, okay, cool. Yeah. I've heard good things. So, but yeah.
Sweet. Alrighty. Thank you all. I appreciate everyone. I haven't really been keeping up on follows and stuff, but I appreciate everyone that's followed. Make sure y'all follow BG and Meta. I think we all stream pretty regularly throughout the week. So yeah, thank you so much, y'all.